How is everyone doing? Strength Chat episode 61, and today I have got a very special guest for you. This is actually a very special guest for me as well. I spoke to this guy when me and a trainer I work with called Matt Cook first set out doing S&C Matt and Steve maybe a year and a half ago. He is the co-owner and lead S&C coach at TD Athletes Edge. He's also spoken and presented around the US as well as internationally in Milan, and he's also been featured in numerous websites and magazines. He's also a really cool guy. Today I am joined by Matt Ibrahim. How are you doing, sir?
Stephen, my man, I appreciate you having me on. This is a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to diving in deep here. So hopefully everyone has their snorkels.
What have you been up to recently? How are you doing? What have you been working on? For anyone listening, we've already had about a 15-minute chat before we actually started this podcast, so we might cover some things that we've already spoken about.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't like to sit still. I like to make sure that I'm staying busy, keeping on top of things, and whether it's, developing on the personal side or the professional side, whether it's physically, cognitively, keeping my mind fresh, my body fresh. So I think the biggest thing and the most important thing is my number one role, my number one priority is that as our lead strength and conditioning coach and co-owner at TD Athletes Edge in Boston, Mass, is to make sure every single person in the facility, staff, coaches, interns, admin, clients, athletes, every single person in the facility feel comfortable and feel safe and feel that they're on the right path, on their own individual path toward their specific goals for building lifelong durability and health and all those good things. So that's my number one priority. And so it is extremely important that I do daily check-ins. I make sure I'm checking with people. How are you feeling? How are things going for you from a training standpoint? How are things outside of the gym? How's your family doing? How's your kids' soccer team doing? How are you doing with your running and your endurance? How are your joints feeling? Sleep quality, stuff like that. Just in engaging with the people in our facility, so our team, our athletes, and our clients, and our staff, and making sure that everyone's on the right path. And I'm trying to, as I enter year 12 now in this field, I try to make sure that I'm listening much more than I'm saying, which is tough for me because I have a lot to say and I like to speak and I enjoy teaching, educating, and coaching. But what I'm learning is the more I'm getting into the field is the more that I can listen and understand, keyword, red, bold, italicized, underline this word, understanding other people and in receiving their information and taking in all of that context truly helps paint the picture. So you hear a lot about these days, so you're monitoring workload, looking at workload volumes and keeping track of people's health from that standpoint, from the workload, the monitoring, some of the work from Tim Gavitt. And so I think the biggest thing for me is just trying to understand other people in our facility. What are their pain points? What are maybe they're struggling with from a training standpoint, from physiological standpoint, stress management standpoint, and seeing if there are avenues where I can step in and be a resource and support, or maybe there's a colleague within our facility or within our team that can help out in that realm. So just trying to understand people in our facility and make everyone around me better, and just be a support and be a team player. So that's the biggest thing for me, what I'm working on now. I mean, there's a variety of other things as well, but that's priority number one.
So how many hours or how often do you coach throughout the week then?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a split shift at our facility. Our team is building now, but I would say on average, I'm on the coaching floor probably 30 to 40 hours a week, like most coaches are, and just putting in the man hours and putting in the work hours. I mean, obviously, like we all know in the field of strength conditioning and sport performance and healthcare and fitness, that a part of the job is the not so fun administrative work. I actually like that work a lot for some odd reason. It allows me to use my, time management skills and organizational skills. And so I enjoy that stuff. And, there's admin, there's building up projects and stuff of that nature. And I would say 30 to 40 hours of coaching. The rest is kind of those fill in the blanks admin work. But I enjoy it, man. I think, being on the floor and seeing the floor from different angles and leading the floor, it allows me to truly manage the flow, not only of our team, but our athletes and our facility, and making sure that everyone's in the right position and on the right path for themselves, and that they feel confident and empowered and strong about what they're doing.
Yeah, I think sometimes that you still need to be in the thick of coaching and around people all the time. I think sometimes if you step too far away from that, like the first point that you mentioned about listening to what your clients and athletes are saying, sometimes you can feel a little bit detached by them, because if they're coming into the gym to train with you, it's their time. You should be listening to them, asking how they're feeling, and then from there, as you say, you can try and step in with pieces of advice or coaching tips to help them along.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that face-to-face time, that in the trenches time, where I'm actually seeing, listening, learning, understanding them, that helps me so much, because it's a lot like program writing. So you've done your assessment, you've seen the athlete move under load, you understand kind of their movement archetype and what current abilities and skill sets they have, and what are some of the abilities and skill sets that you want to work toward, and maybe that they could be better and improve in some of their goals. So it's the same thing with program writing. You kind of already have seen the things that you want in their program, their new program, in your mind. It's just a matter of putting pen to pad. So a lot of what I see in the facility allows me to have that ability. And I'm so thankful for working with the 150 plus clients we have, in person, online, worldwide, and locally at our facility in Salem, Mass. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to be leading that group from a coaching standpoint on the floor.
Awesome. We were chatting a little bit before we actually started the podcast, and for your own education and development, how is the master's going, and how's your own education going?
Yeah, man. It's funny. I was talking with one of our interns today, and so a part of my job is being our internship coordinator as well, in addition to co-owner and lead strength coach. And so that's a job I take very seriously. So the reason why I bring this into the fold is today's what, 2000, we're in 2019, March 1st. I just realized that I've been in school, I've been in academia since September of 2007. So that's undergraduate. That's taking way too long to finish undergraduate degree, because I wanted to get into PT programs, didn't get in, took night courses, at a local community colleges, my massage therapy degree, which I don't use anymore, now in a master's program. I've been in this education realm for a while, and so I think the number one thing I look at before I dive into what I'm currently doing from an education standpoint is knowing that continuing education is great, but making sure that we're looking at opportunities outside of academia as well to learn from, whether it's shadowing in person, volunteering in person, interning in person. So textbooks and classes and coursework and conferences are great, but making sure that you're spending some face time in facilities and places that you want to work in eventually, and learning in the trenches in person is crucial. Yeah. So right now I'm a current master's degree student with a master's degree in health science with a track in sport performance, which is directly going into their PhD program. It's at Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. It's an online program. And I'm about 4 classes away from having to write my thesis. Okay. And then that will directly dive into the PhD program there as well. And that's something I'm looking forward to. In addition to that, I'm looking into potentially being an adjunct professor. I'm not sure where yet, but potentially in this upcoming fall, just teaching a course, kind of learning the ropes of that realm. I think, long term, I would like to be more involved in education and academia, just to be able to do my part in giving back and paying it forward. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well.
Yeah. Awesome. A lot of things to keep you busy. I know we have from the universities around Leeds, we have a few interns that come down to Primal, and sometimes when they first come in, they're a little bit rough around the edges. But we've had an intern that's been with us for maybe 6 months, and to see how he's developed from when he first came into where he is now is absolutely awesome. He's doing classes, he's doing consults, he's helping out on reception, and just getting involved, like what we've just spoken about, at the start of this podcast, just getting thrown in at the deep end, being around people, speaking to them, listening to them, and I think that'll lead him into good stead whichever next facility he goes to, or ends up setting up his own business or whatever. I think that'll do him good. So wherever he goes, he'll have that little bit of advantage from having been around people and coaches and being able to develop.
I think that's a huge piece, man. Stephen, I think you hit on that, and that's a great point, because I think being thrown in the trenches, and I think having to learn on the fly, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it helps mold you and builds character, especially in this field. Strength and conditioning coaches, this is great, the X's and O's of exercise science and kinesiology and physiology, and it's all great, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to communicate at a highly effective level, mm-hmm. and just relate to your peers and your athletes and your teammates and your staff and your coaches, you're not going to make it. You have to be able to communicate, use social skills, use intrapersonal and interpersonal skills, and just be able to sit back, communicate, and just fit in from a social standpoint. I think that's really important, and it's a skill set. So social skills, they're a set of skills that we don't often focus on in academia and education, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. It's not really, the light has not been shed on it properly, in my opinion. So I think if we can really hone in on that skill set and add that to our arsenal, our tool belt, if you will, I think we'll be better for moving forward for our athletes and just for the field in general moving forward.
Absolutely. You've got to you've got to coach the person first, and make yourself make them feel comfortable, and make sure that what you're saying is helping them go to where they want to be.
Absolutely.
So for anyone listening, obviously I've spoken to you with Matt before, with S&C, with Matt and Steve. Also spoke to you on the Primal Academy podcast. But for anyone listening who might not know your background and how you got to be the position that you're in now, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll try to be brief here, because I know my story can get quite inundated and long. Like anyone else, high school I worked out, I played sports, and I wanted to go to school for exercise science, and I ended up messing around and not really taking academics that seriously as I do now early on. So like I said, like I alluded to earlier, spent 6 years doing my undergraduate degree, failed a bunch of courses. I just wasn't as driven and wasn't as organized as I was now, and I didn't have a goal. And I think a lot of freshmen and sophomore exercise science or related healthcare field students can relate to that, because I don't know that a lot of schools and educational systems and academia really paint a clear picture early on. And this is no fault to any school in particular. I think it's just a general statement, meaning you get into the field and you like exercise, you like training, you might like helping people, but you ask yourself the question, what do I want to be from a career standpoint? I'm not even sure what the strength and conditioning coach is, or I'm not sure what a physical therapist is, or an athletic trainer, or a sports performance professional, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think being able to understand early on is so helpful. So for me, it was a challenge, and I feel as though many students face that challenge. Didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily. Ended up getting injured, like I'm sure most people do in sports, and saw firsthand some physical therapy and sports rehab, and I figured out about 4 years into school, when I was about 3/4 of the way done, and I should have been done at that point, but I wasn't, unfortunately, because of the failed courses. I said, maybe I'll try doctor of physical therapy school. Ended up finishing up my bachelor's degree. I was concurrently working as a strength and conditioning coach in multiple sports performance and S&C facilities, while also being a physical therapy rehab aide, and learning just the rehab model from a very, very, very assisting role, and seeing how both fields could complement each other, and just looking at movement from a basic standpoint. And just, I was applying to DPT schools, didn't get in. I was taking multiple night courses, prerequisite courses, and ultimately didn't get in, but I learned a lot in terms of just working hard and tenacity, and just building a resume, I guess, and connecting with like-minded individuals in the field, both strength coaches, athletic trainers, physical therapists, and people of the like. And so, looking back, I realized that was probably the big turning point in my career. I didn't see it at the time, Stephen, but I realize now that was a big turning point for me, just connecting with people. And then, I ended up getting my license in massage therapy, because I wanted to fill that void of providing some form of treatment. Ended up being, I was doing some part-time LMT work and soft tissue work as well as strength coaching. And I realized about after a year doing that, it was great and all. And I just don't think it was for me. And I knew that deep down, my biggest passion was coaching people, educating people, and teaching them. And I wasn't being able to fulfill that by treating someone on a table. Not that I enjoyed it. I thought I was okay at it, but I knew that there are so many PTs and LMTs and sports rehab professionals out there that are way better than I am at that side of things. So I wanted to focus in on and really key on being the best strength and conditioning coach that I could be for the athletes in front of me and the teammates I worked alongside. So, I made that decision, and I ended up linking up with the team that I'm with now. So at TD Athletes Edge, I work alongside such a phenomenal team, and I'm so grateful to be with this team. So we got Tim DiFrancesco, Ryan Healy, Jess Mirasola, Angela Tucci, Jeff Stern, and we work with a ton of great clinicians locally and in-house. So Sarah Thatcher, Heather Burke, and all of the like. So we're so grateful to be, we provide strength and conditioning, recovery, training, nutrition, but also in the same building, there's, physical therapists, there's massage therapy, there's chiropractic. So it's kind of this all-encompassing performance and health model. And so I'm truly grateful to be a part of that. And like I kind of alluded to earlier, we're fortunate to work with 150 plus clients, and that roster is only growing. And so one of our big taglines is, all humans are athletes and all athletes are humans. And so the biggest thing with that is, if you really look at what an athlete stands for, every single human has the capability of being an athlete. All it means is you have the ability to demonstrate strength, be healthy, and be fit, and be building toward the long term. So you are demonstrating skills of athleticism and being athletic. And so I think most folks say, oh, I'm not an athlete. That's not me. And our response is, oh, heck yeah, you are. I mean, are you building towards health? Sure. Are you physically active? Sure. Are you demonstrating skills that would be associated with being athletic and showing athleticism? Well, sure. And so this is what we're truly after. And so athletes are not just the folks who necessarily play a sport, whether it's soccer, football, rugby, baseball, basketball, hockey, et cetera. They're also the folks who partake in endurance sports, whether it's running, biking, swimming, marathons, triathlons. They're also the folks who they want to garden and grow flower beds and walk around the neighborhood and maybe go for a jog and pick up their grandchildren. And so every single person has the requisite or can build toward the requisite capabilities. It's just a matter of, it's a mindset approach. It's a mental approach. It's saying to yourself, hey, I'm not only am I a client, I'm an athlete. And not only am I an athlete in the facility, I'm part of the team. Not only am I part of the team and I'm an athlete, I'm part of the overall community. So we really try to make our facility akin to, a performance center. There's the locker room, there's the showers, there's all the amenities that we include. And, we try to make it seem as though, hey, the team needs you, man. Like, good to see you today. Did you get a great workout in? And how was your training session? How's your body feeling? And so it's just, we use a play on that in terms of you're part of the team. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And people seem to like it and enjoy it. And again, we couldn't be more grateful to be a part of the community that we're in Salem, Massachusetts.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. When you the first thing that you mentioned about trying a few different things, I think it is good to, as a coach, to try different things, and then the more that you try different things and think, oh, actually, I want to go down this route a little bit more. It's a little bit like as a kid, you'll play loads of different sports and then think, actually, I really like that one. I want to give that one a go. In terms of the clients and athletes that are coming in who are feeling part of a team, 100%. That's what keeps people coming back. Down at Primal, we've started doing the small group personal training, and coming from a team sport background myself, it's a great example that you've said there, making them feel part of a team that, do you know what, I am gonna come into this session, even if I'm not feeling a little bit at the top of my game, I'm still gonna come in, and something is better than nothing, because they feel part of that team.
Mm-hmm.
When you're chatting about, every human is an athlete, every athlete is a human. Obviously, you spoke about, the meaning behind that. But in terms of when people think that, as an athlete, I can't do that training because that training is for, someone who plays a sport or, is classed as an athlete. How do you think that can influence training, and how would you go about, adding in a little bit more athletic style of training for people?
It's a great question, Stephen. I think the biggest thing is when you look at training, a lot of people in our field, they're after the quote unquote sexy skills and exercises and drills and the stuff that's flashy on social media. And we couldn't be further removed from that than we are. And so our biggest thing is, what are the simple, basic human movement patterns that have been around for centuries that we should all be training, and that most of the great facilities are doing? So some sort of squat pattern. I'm not here to have the great debate about back squats, front squats. Look, load the comfortable squat pattern for the individual client per their specific goals and their health history and their injury history, and there it is. I mean, for example, a goblet squat can do wonders, and we can leave it at that. So great. So load a squat pattern. Load some sort of a hip hinge pattern, whether it's a deadlift, whether it's an RDL, or whatever it may be that is comfortable for that athlete. Load some sort of single leg strength exercise, whether it's split squats, whether it's lunges, whether it's one leg RDLs, lateral squats, whatever it may be. And when we look at single leg, I also look at the quote unquote pseudo single leg. So like a split squat. So you're really placing emphasis on predominantly on one of the legs while the other leg is assisting, stuff of that nature as well. Yeah. So then you want to obviously train the trunk and the core musculature. So all of the anti-patterns, anti-flexion, anti-lateral flexion, anti-extension, et cetera, anti-rotation, et cetera. But also, there's nothing wrong with training when the time and the place calls for actual flexion of the trunk and actual extension of the trunk, again, per the specific client in front of you and what their needs are and what they're demonstrating with and what they're showing with. Nothing wrong with carrying things, whether pharma carries, suitcase carries, overhead carries, pushing sleds, working on actual aerobic-based work capacity work, conditioning, sprinting. These are all just, upper body push, upper body pull, overhead patterns. These are all just basic human movement patterns that we should all be training, that we load the heck out of those things. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is we take a very, very, very slow cook approach to things, almost like a crock pot. So instead of really speeding up our progressions for our athletes from phase to phase, we slow things down. We load in a ton of tempo work, a ton of isometric work, a ton of eccentric work. It's all tempo based. And so when these athletes and clients of ours are making progressions from phase to phase, they're not making these giant leaps or these giant jumps. I'll give you an example. For phase one, a client might get a dumbbell goblet box squat. So you have a 12-inch box, maybe a couple of blue pads, just so that their depth, their hip range of motion will be great. Yeah. You have a dumbbell loaded anteriorly in a goblet position, and then you have them drop down to a squat, right? And so they do their thing there. And then let's say phase two, for example, right? You have them do the same exact dumbbell goblet box squat pattern, but maybe you add an ISO from a tempo standpoint at the bottom of their depth. And maybe, maybe you drop one of those blue pads out of the situation so they can increase depth and work on motor control in the bottom end range of the squat depth. Yeah. And maybe phase three, you completely remove the box altogether, but now you add in tempo work. So it's a specific 3-second count on the descent going down, a 3-second isometric hold at the bottom, and a 3-second ascent coming back up. And they may not like you for that, but that's great because you're giving them the tools, the necessary tools to be able to squat with great technique, great form, and also great body control. Yeah. Body control is at the very core of what athleticism and being an athlete really is. Can you control your body through a variety of positions, et cetera, et cetera? So that's an example of how we program just very simple approaches here. We don't want to overdo things. We're building for the long-term health. We're not building to crush you or provide just a sweat.
Yeah, absolutely. The key thing, the key statement that you said there is, long-term health. The sign of a good athlete is, that they play week in, week out. They play season after season rather than, trying to make them really, really strong or really, really fast, but then injuring them. That's the exact same for, the everyday person. They, need to be able to, pick groceries up from the floor or play with the kids, consecutively rather than, always being in pain or injured. And I think sometimes, when you're saying you take a slow and steady approach, people want that quick fix. They want it now, whereas health and performance is a long-term thing. They've got all the time in the world to get to where they want to be. And the normal movement patterns that you mentioned there, athletes, they still need to do that. They still need to be able to control their body and know what they're doing. Or when it comes to whatever sport, whatever event they're doing, they're just gonna injure themselves. And I think sometimes the general population can look at athletes and think, well, what type of training do they do? What are they doing differently? And the simple answer is that they don't actually do that much different, really.
It's true. It's so true. I mean, that's the big thing. There are two things I want to add there, and so that you hit it, my friend. The big thing is when we have in our facility, so we do, it's called custom coaching. We call it that, but it's essentially semi-private training. So it's up to a four athlete to one coach ratio. We allow up to eight athletes per hour, and obviously two coaches are on the floor, and everyone's on their own individualized training program that's written by our coaching staff, and it's derived from their injury history and their assessment protocol from what their intake form. So the biggest thing is, you might have a 45-year-old middle, athlete in there working out, and she's a mom of two kids doing a goblet squat. And then you also have a 15-year-old kid who plays basketball doing a goblet squat. And so when they see those parallels, they then begin to realize, what? Maybe this coaching staff and all of the times they're telling me, hey, all humans are athletes. You're an athlete as well. Maybe they're actually right, and maybe they're actually onto something. And I'm starting to build self-efficacy, how I feel about myself, my confidence level, my thought process. Yeah, I can do this. Some self-empowerment. They feel stronger. They're healthier. They begin to build some durability and resilience for long-term health. And so not only that, but also another thing that we can add into the fold is too many folks, when it comes to building power development and plyometrics, they only focus on the force production, right? The how high can you jump? Let's load up about 36 inches of a box jump. Let's see how high you could jump, 48 inches, yada yada yada. And while all that looks great on social media, you have to ask yourself, what is the risk versus reward here, right? The ultimate number one rule in our field is do no harm. Yeah. We have to be able to provide the minimum effective dosage of a given exercise to then for the outcome to be a maximum effective outcome. So we want to make sure that we're giving them just enough of what they need, not more than what they need, because we have to keep in mind volumes of their physical activity as well. How many games are they playing that week? Mm-hmm. If it's an endurance athlete, right? What's their running, biking, cycling schedule looking like on a weekly basis? All of these things we have to take into account. So what we try to do is focus on, you could even add in, this is important for long-term fall prevention for, you talk about senior citizens and as we age as a population, not only just for sports and deceleration mechanics and landing mechanics and be able to pump the brakes, right? All of these things come to the fold, right? So deceleration, fall prevention, landing mechanics, right? So we work on just, on two legs, being able to not a box jump or a squat jump, but a drop squat or a drop squat to stick. And I can provide video links after to give examples of these, but being able to, let's say you're standing in a squat position, right? And your toes never leave the floor. You reach your hands up as high as you can. Your heels only come off the floor, and you drop down quickly and you land very, very quietly in that bottom athletic position. So that exercise right there, we use that for our winter skiers. We use that for our running athletes, our cyclists, our swimmers. We use that for our basketball players, our soccer players, our tennis players. The list goes on. These are just basic human movement patterns and things that we should all have as skill sets, right? Just pumping the brakes, slowing down, being able to not fall necessarily, but land and decelerate and absorb force. That's the key. Absorb force and absorb contact in a controlled manner. So again, I can provide a host of links with our drop squat series, our drop one leg squat, just being able to control deceleration forces. I can provide a host of YouTube videos for that if you want to paint a clearer picture. But we implement a lot of those things, and those are plyometrics. Those are basic level 1 plyometrics that should precede and should come before force production plyometrics. Yeah. So that's how we program for all of our athletes. Doesn't matter what age they are, doesn't matter where they are, their sport or activities. It's the same for everyone.
That's awesome. It's like when you were mentioning there about the squat. Everyone sees exactly the same as the box jumps that people see. I actually shared an article by I did a post. I think it was a couple of months ago actually, on box jumps, how to make box jumps harder without not necessarily making them higher. And then I saw an article by Tony Gentlecore about how to jump properly. And it is that thing, you see people posting videos or doing it in the gym, stacking the box up really, really high. And 9 times out of 10, they're doing it wrong. They're hitting the edge of the box and then jumping straight back down. Whereas, and people will see that and be like, oh, I want to do that, so I'm gonna give it a go. And they'll see all this cool stuff rather than thinking, let's get the first things done first and then progress to the more advanced stuff. But without those foundations, like we mentioned before, you are more likely to injure yourself. I think, as we've said again, trying to rush, and people think that when it comes to the plyometrics, trying to do all the crazy stuff, and the key statement, that we're not here to injure people, we're not here to put them at risk of hurting themselves. So yeah, adding those exercises in, and like you say, learning to absorb the force, can then push them in the right direction of, right, then we can start progressing to these other exercises. Yep,
totally agree, brother.
So we chatted there about obviously the training and adding in those fundamental movements, adding in the plyometrics. We also touched a little bit on their mindset and goals. So this is mainly from the general population side of things. So a lot of the times people will come in and say, I want to put muscle on, I want to lose fat. And sometimes if they aren't 100% going in the right direction all the time, they can get a little bit disheartened. So how have you found, treating the human as an athlete, if you like, and maybe looking at performance goals of, look, we're going to work on absorbing the force, we're going to work on a little bit more of the technique of the skill of landing, or, perfecting the squat or anything like that. How have you found?
So I'm going to take, this is great. No, this is, as you were speaking, I'm thinking I have a perfect example in mind, and at our facility we call this a layup. This is like, I hope it's gonna be what you want, what the response should be. But so we had an athlete recently, and this athlete had an event coming up. I think it was a half marathon 2 weekends ago, and this athlete in particular is also a teacher at a local high school, and the major in which this athlete of ours teaches is communication and effective communication strategies inside of the high school realm, which I thought was a really unique course to teach in high school. Yeah. And it's funny because this will come twofold here. So this athlete was a little bit injured, the groin area, the adductor region, on a run over the weekend. And the athlete was a bit discouraged, and because, she had an event coming up in 2 weeks and was really concerned, and you could see it all over her face. And as a staff, we have to make sure that we're providing ease and comfort for our athletes and our clients, and making sure that they feel comfortable and confident. So especially in my role, it's my job to address that in a very, relaxing, even keeled way, and not come in hot and all aggressive. So, we chatted about it and talked about it. And, I think the biggest thing is letting them know, hey, it's going to be okay. You're dealing with some, a cranky, it's slightly bothered right now, the groin area, but it's not the end of the world. I've had this with myself as well, and some of our athletes have this as well. So you provide a relatability. You want them to feel that they're not on an island all alone. That's the key. When they feel like that, they feel isolated. They feel that they're not confident, and their self-efficacy and how they feel about themselves goes down. So that's priority number one. Provide relatability. Yep, we've had this happen before. I've been through myself. Some athletes have had it as well. Great. Okay, great. And you could see her morale and her confidence slowly build. It was slowly building. And then you say, okay, you know what? Let's go through today's training session. Let's see if anything bothers it. And if it does, immediately we can modify, we can regress the exercise, but still get the same benefit in a safer, more effective way. So we don't tick it off and we preserve your health and durability, especially for your upcoming event. So we want you to perform well and be confident about that. And so it went well. And then at the end, you know, you could see again, her confidence was slowly rising. And at the end, you say, you know what, great. You want to provide some sort of something, maybe it's a homework assignment, maybe it's an exercise they do outside of the facility. So in their mind, they're saying, yeah, I'm working on this daily. So I'm working toward becoming better and in the groin muscle, feeling a bit better. Truth be told, it was just a minor soft tissue discomfort in the groin. It wasn't a major injury. It was just something small. We can shore that up with some targeted, focused, isolated groin adductor work and within a week or two. And so that was the case. And so we gave her, you know, a couple of Copenhagen plank variations. And again, I can provide videos if you need these, but very simple stuff. And, you know, perform X sets of X reps, X days a week. And, you know, I think nothing that I did was otherworldly or just, you know, like something crazy or wild or magical. It was just a matter of just communicating with my athlete and making sure that she felt confident and comfortable and that she was building towards something. And also the key was daily check-ins, you know, just pop her a text message. Hey, you know, it's been a couple of days. How's it going today? How's it feeling? Okay, great. All right, cool. A couple of days go by. Hey, just wanted to check in. I know you have a big run today. Just good luck. Have fun. And keep me posted if anything, any questions you have. And, you know, she came in the next week and, you know, things were continuing to build and grow in the right direction. And then she had her event, her half marathon, and she had a PR. She had a 2-minute
Nice.
PR. And so, you know, again, nothing I did was that amazing. I just kept it simple. I just communicated properly. I let her know that I, as well as our team, were here to support her and that we were here to help her. And that, you know what, it's a relatable thing. Everyone goes through it, and she was going to be awesome. She was going to be great. And so that's how we work our way through things. It's nothing crazy, but the flip side of that is she teaches that course like I talked about, that communication strategy course at high school. And so she invited me to do a lecture on that to her kids, to her high school students. So I thought it was pretty neat, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So, I mean, that's how we address those type of issues. We want to make it, what you don't want to do is dumb it down and say, yeah, you know, it's not a big deal, because what that does, that discourages the athlete.
Yeah.
You want to show them that you're listening and you care and you're understanding toward their problem. And you want to provide a very simple, solutions-based way to solve the problem. And that you're there the entire time to support them. So that's the biggest thing. That's how we would address something like that in our facility with our athletes.
Yeah, the key thing there is problem solving. It's, you know, helping that person get to where they want to be, whether it's learning a skill, you know, if they've had a little bit of an injury, and helping them work towards that. As a byproduct of that, you know, getting the PB running time, or whether it's, you know, adding in a little bit of muscle or losing a little bit of fat. It just comes down to, right, how can we as a coach help the athlete? Key statement there. Problem solve to make them get to where they want to be. Awesome, it's good. So when are you going to do that chat at the school?
That's going to be, I believe, in mid-April. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think, you know, I've been very fortunate to have had many opportunities to present both internationally and nationally over probably 40 or 50 times now. There are workshops, lectures, in corporate companies, in sport performance facilities, PT rehab clinics. But I've never had the opportunity to speak to high school students.
Okay.
And I have to imagine that's going to be quite difficult. And I look forward to the challenge because, you know, it's one thing if you have a paying attendee, they pay to come to your workshop. It's a full-day workshop. It's content and information that they want. They get CEUs. I mean, that to me is a little bit easier. Yeah. Whereas talking to a high school student who's going through that whole growth and development part of their life, they may not want to hear what you have to say. Yeah. And so, you know what? I look forward to the challenge of that. I think it's going to be fun, and it's going to challenge me to have to be great in that situation, be great for them and really produce for them. And if I can leave there with, you know, having them have learned at least one thing about how they can develop their communication and social skills in that area, then that'll make me happy. So that's my goal. Fingers crossed, and wish me luck, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I hope it goes well. Just on that topic of going back to the interns that come down to Primal, obviously it's part of their course, so they have to do some form of internship. Some interns come down and because they have to be there, they're not really bothered. They just want to sit in the staff room, but others will come in and dive straight in. But as long as, exactly like you said, as long as they walk away and they've learned something, as long as they can take something away from them, from the time of their internship, I'm happy as long as they've taken something rather than it's not a wasted trip then. And then I feel as a coach myself, I'll feel actually at least I've helped somebody there rather than it just being a wasted amount of time.
Absolutely.
So we've covered just going back to the training side of things. We covered adding the fundamental movements within training. Before the training, it's one of those things where sometimes I think people often do maybe too much or too little of it, is warm-ups. So I know recently you have posted quite a lot about warm-ups. What are they and why are they important?
Yeah, so I mean, I liken warm-ups to, so I live in Boston, right? And so it's New England, right? It's known for having fluctuating weather patterns, and in the wintertime it's quite cold and can snow a lot, and it's such a fun place to live. But it's the weather can be quite erratic. So
yeah,
the biggest thing is I look at warm-ups like this, right? So you have the luxury of having an automatic car starter, right? You're not going to just go outside, start the car, and drive because the car's not going to be ready yet. It just snowed overnight. It's about a foot of snow. It's freezing outside. It's about 15 degrees. The car needs time to warm up properly, right? And so you hit the automatic car starter, and you need about 8 to 10 minutes to get prepared to drive, right? And so I look at the warm-up like that. You need to prepare the body and the tissues, the joints, to be able to undergo loading patterns, whether it's squat, hip hinge, single leg, upper body push, pull, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the first thing I'll say is you have a camp of folks who spend way too long warming up. I'm gonna hop on the foam roller for 30 minutes. I'm gonna roll out every piece of tissue in my body. Then I'm gonna go on the treadmill for 20 minutes. Then I'm gonna go do some mobility drills, and it's been an hour now. Now I'm ready to lift weights. At that point, you might as well just leave the gym. It's been way too long. And so we try to be extremely efficient and effective with our warm-ups. We want our warm-ups in general at our facility to last no more than 8 to 10 minutes at the maximum. You have to have your ground-based soft tissue drills if and only if it's specific to the client that they need it at that point. For example, you have a client who's dealing with a lot of quad muscle soreness. They've been running a lot, they've been cycling a lot, they've been swimming a lot and training a lot. Okay, then that would deem it necessary to add a little bit of foam roll or soft tissue quad, maybe 20, 30 seconds aside, but that's it. Don't overdo it. Keep it simple, keep it short and concise. Other than some specific targeted soft tissue areas, again, it's on a case-by-case basis. Next thing is just do some ground-based activation, lateral hips, some clamshell work, some glute work, some bridges, some isometric or eccentric hamstring work. Maybe you're doing some trunk work, side plank core work, bird dog, cat cows, some dead bugs. Very simple, low-level trunk and core activation work, hip activation work, stuff of that nature. And then maybe do some standing dynamic mobility drills, whether they're walking inchworms, whether it's greatest stretch or Spider-Man drills, or any sort of dynamic movement patterns that would be deemed in the warm-up, to move in 10 yards and 5 yards, just moving and getting the blood flowing, circulation, lubricating the joints, moving around, getting everything primed to be able to lift some weights. The last piece, obviously you want to add some sort of plyometric, whether it's deceleration, acceleration drills, absorbing forces, producing forces, upper body, maybe it's medicine ball stuff, maybe it's jumping, plyometric, single leg, box jumps, maybe some of the drop squat to stick stuff that we talked about earlier. Yeah. And then you want to make sure that amongst all of that, you want to have added the patterns you're going to lift in that day. So for example, if I'm going to do maybe a kettlebell elevated deadlift with, 4 inches off the ground with a kettlebell, I might want to load a wall hip hinge pattern with my body weight for 10 to 15 reps. If I'm going to do some sort of a squat pattern, it might not be a bad idea to have a medicine ball in my hands. I stand up nice and tall. As I squat down, I simultaneously press the ball forward. So I'm grooving that squat pattern, that up and down pattern there. So stuff of that nature. If I'm going to do some overhead work, right, it might not be a bad idea to get a yoga plank or a yoga push-up or a downward dog in, right? Something like that where I'm getting that overhead flexion, that thoracic extension, trunk stability, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we look at warm-ups. And obviously it changes and varies from case to case. We do have a general outline of what we like to see, but we will also want our coaching staff to have the creative juices flowing and fill in the blanks where we see necessary. So if we have one of the skeleton of our warm-up, say, bridge or, hip activation, you fill in the blank, whether it's a long bridge iso, whether it's a bridge with squeeze, whether it's a mini band bridge with, you're avoiding adduction, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to keep things simple, concise, and clear, 8 to 10 minutes at maximum. And then let's lift some weights. Let's get under some loads. Let's move some stuff around. Let's get exercise. Let's get strength training. Right. And so we try to keep things really simple at our facility.
Yeah. Why do you think sometimes people, obviously you mentioned there about, people who take a really long warm up? Do you think that's because they don't know what they should be doing, or they're trying to hit everything? Why do you think sometimes people get warm ups wrong and take a little bit too long?
I think it's a combination, Stephen. I think some folks just truly don't know what they're doing, and I think those are the people that need to hire a strength and conditioning or performance training professional first and foremost, because everyone needs a coach. Everyone needs someone who can guide them and teach and educate them. So that's number one. I think that we just have a portion of our population who just don't know. They're just not educated properly. And that's on us in the field to educate them properly. That's number one. Number two would be, I think most people don't realize that their body is much more durable and resilient than they think it is. And so, okay, you undergo, and by no means am I trying to downplay injuries here. I'm not doing that. What I'm trying to say is obviously seek out a healthcare professional, PT, chiro, massage therapy, athletic trainer that can be the sports medicine professional and rehab professional that you need if it's a serious injury. But if it's minor soft tissue stuff that you're dealing with or something that is just a minor strain here or there, you don't want to spend so long foam rolling or adding mobility into that area or flexibility. I mean, that's going to be helpful to an extent, but we have to add load. We have to strength train. We have to provide motor control and stability. That's going to enhance our ability to be stronger and more resilient to injury in those areas moving forward. So I think misinformed, miseducated is a part of it, but also, not believing that they're as durable and as resilient as they really are. And so I think all of that is going into why these warm-ups are taking so long for people. And, the whole fad of using foam rollers for 30 minutes and having to soft tissue mobilize every single area. And you look at the market in fitness and healthcare and social and strength and conditioning and sport performance, especially on social media. I mean, every single day I feel like there's this new mobility tool or soft tissue tool. And like, I'm not here to bash any of them by any means. I'm not, but at one point you have to move, you have to load, and you have to get it going, right? That stuff's that may be helpful in some areas. If you find value there, then go for it. I personally, I don't really do any sort of foam rolling or soft tissue work. I'm not sitting here saying that doesn't work. I'm sitting here saying for me individually, what works best is just moving around and lifting and making sure I'm keeping my body healthy from a daily maintenance standpoint, from an active recovery standpoint, my sleep quality, my nutrition quality, my movement quality. And so that to me has been more beneficial. But, if there's a time and a place for soft tissue work and it's valuable to you individually, then go for it.
Absolutely. Just picking out a couple of points that you mentioned there. On the other end of the spectrum, people who are coming in, there's still people that come into the gym who come in and train by themselves, who don't do any warm up. They just come in and they'll dive straight into it. And again, it is that education side of it. If people sit down and have a half an hour catch up with me, I'd at least give them maybe a handful of exercises to be like, let's try these out before you squat or anything like that. And it's only going to help enhance your workout. Touching on the foam rolling and the stretching side of things, we chatted before the podcast about before Christmas. I put my back out, went to go see the physio, and she actually said, what's your usual warm up routine? What do you do? And I do a little bit of foam rolling and spoke through the rest of the stuff that I did. And she just posed the question as, why do you foam roll? Do you not think that time would be used better doing something else? And I was thinking, but I have tight quads and that sort of stuff. And from putting my back out, seeing the physio, I've completely changed my what my warm up is. I foam roll a little bit on my recovery days, on the days that I'm not training. But apart from that, my warm up is moving a lot more, and actually, sitting at the bottom of it, doing a squat and pressing a plate out in front, so I can sink a little bit lower, and exactly like you say, just moving a little bit more. And I do think people get caught up because it is that thing that everyone thinks, oh well, I need to make sure that I foam roll everything and stretch everything. But another key statement that you said there, it is based on the individual. It's not a one size fits all.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, you can add there, I mean, if you're in a pinch, you have to look for a pinch for time rather. You have to look at what are the biggest bang for my buck exercises I can do in my warm up to get me to the barbell or to the dumbbells or to get lifting basically. And so whether it's a light Turkish get up, which, I mean, you look at that attacks and addresses, I mean, we're talking motor control, stability, flexibility, mobility. I mean, that tackles everything. If you just did a Turkish get up at relatively low to moderate loads for a few reps aside, I mean, I would have to imagine you'd be pretty warmed up. If you're using great technique, that's the key, great technique and form. I mean, you have to look at your bang for buck warm-up exercises. And also, let's not discredit the value of, for example, if I'm going to squat, right, it's probably a good idea to spend some time like you had said, and like we've been talking about here, in the squat pattern. You can fill in the blank, right, of the exercise you want, but spend some time on the squat pattern. If you're going to deadlift, spend some time in that hip hinge pattern in the warm-up. If you're going to overhead press, the same thing goes. And so spending time in those patterns. Also, if you're going to be using a barbell in any of those patterns, use the barbell itself for 10, 15, 20 reps, groove the pattern, spend quality time building volume with light loads, but you're still spending time there and you're moving with intent. And so I think that part of training gets really overlooked because someone might say, well, you're not warming up. Well, why are you not warming up? It's the same thing. You just have a barbell alone, no weights on it, and you're moving in the pattern that you're about to start loading heavy. It only makes sense to me to prime the body and to really get the central nervous system primed for loading because you're priming the pattern.
Absolutely. And I think, the majority of people that we'll be working with are, and, for how society is now, people spend, if they're working at a desk, they've got an office job, they're sat down for X amount of time all day. So, the warm up then becomes even more important. And, like you say, using the empty barbell, moving a little bit more because they're sat down, they're not moving for however long during the day. So when you mentioned there about the warm up of hitting certain points, is there any common themes that you have in your warm-ups? Any key common areas that you would hit all the time and should be a staple of anybody's warm-ups?
Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, you look at today's society, I mean, every single person could benefit from some form of hip extension, thoracic extension. You look at those two primarily, right? You look at overhead range of motion to tolerance, right? You look at knee flexion to tolerance. These are just basic things that our joints should be able to express our tissues and our, in our body and so on and so forth, and support structures in our body as well. So I think the other thing too is let's not, let's show the value of simple things that we neglect. Usually, I mean, you look at loading the lower compartment of the leg, the gastroc, the soleus, the Achilles tendon, right? The calf in general, the ankle joint, single leg loading of like a heel raise or eccentric only heel raise. You look at, any form of glute activation / lateral hip activation. Never hurts to have strong glutes, right?
Yeah.
You look at any sort of trunk stability drills, whether it's, low level bird dog or dead bugs or stuff of that nature. You look at spine hygiene. So being able to move from segment to segment in our entire spinal column, from the neck to the mid back to the lower back and the pelvis itself, something like a cat cow, right? Or an angry cat or whatever. There's so many names here, but I think like cat camel, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So I think stuff like that, those items always live in our programming because they're just basic things that all humans can benefit from. And I think the other thing too is it doesn't get the spotlight at all ever, but simple low level balance and stability drills on one leg. Whether it's, you're on one leg and you're balancing a kettlebell left to right, or you're just holding a single leg balance for 30 seconds, stuff like that, especially at the end of a workout in the recovery, or maybe at the end of the warm up, there's value there, right? You're challenging someone's ability to balance and stabilize, and we're working toward, proprioception and awareness and, that spatial awareness in space, and you're balancing. And so it's really good to add some of those as well. So those are some of the key items that are true staples in our programming.
Yeah. When you mentioned in there about the single leg exercises, it's surprising how a lot of people do struggle with those exercises. I've started to add a few more of those exercises in, just because people find them so challenging, but they do have great benefit from doing them. And yeah, the key points that we're hitting there, when you mentioned about the glutes and the T-spine and all that sort of stuff, I think they should be staples in there because of, like we mentioned before, of how people are, sitting down a lot more. Is there any way that you would, depending on the workout or depending what the main lift of the days for your client, when you would vary the warm-ups? Obviously, you mentioned a little bit that if you would add in some overhead stuff, or if you're doing a deadlift, you would add in some hinge patterns. How much variance would you have in the warm-ups depending on their main lifts?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, not too much. I mean, we want to make sure that we're generally warming the body up and blood flow and circulation, all that type of things, and priming the nerve system. But if they're going to deadlift that day, maybe there are one or two movements at the end that we add in to prep the hip hinge. Also, we could double up the A block. So, for example, our program, let's say there's A1 and A2. So exercise number 1 and 2 in A block, the circuit, right? You could be sneaky as a coach and add in 2 exercises inside of A block. So it really looks like A1, A2, A3. And so in that case, exercise 1 would be, for example, a body weight wall hip hinge where you aim your butt toward the wall behind you, hands go forward in that hip hinge pattern for 15 reps. And then immediately exercise A2 is a kettlebell elevated deadlift, a loaded hip hinge pattern. And then A3 is a trunk stability, which we all know would complement your ability to create stiffness and trunk stability in the deadlift itself. And so that's another way you could do it as well. So I don't think there's an exact science here. I think it's just whether you backload it at the end of the warm-up for 1 or 2 exercises, or you add it to the actual lift, but right before it as an exercise as well. There's many ways to skin the cat. And so I think if we just make sure we hit that pattern at least once in the warm-up, maybe twice if we have time for it, that's a very simple way to address that.
Yeah. I think when you just mentioned there about adding it in just before the exercise, I think sometimes think that, like we've said before, throwing everything into the warm-up, there's no reason why you can't hit the main areas or the common areas that we need to mobilize, and then adding in an exercise just before the lift. I know for myself, I'll do a squat and press a plate away from me, just to make sure that I'm opening my hips up a little bit more, and then I'll go into my squat. That's still my warm-up, but it's just before I've started my main lift.
Exactly. Yep, right on.
So just moving on to sort of the next topic, if you like. You mentioned it a little bit about when you mentioned about your body is a lot more resilient and robust than a lot of people give it credit for. You have put a lot of content out there about joint health. So when people are training and have been training regularly, why does it become so important to keep on top of your joint health? And what are the main areas that you've seen that need to be focused on?
That's a big thing. I mean, I think number one, we should be writing training programs that are joint friendly. So joint friendly strength training, that is so crucial. And so I think that's number one. I think we have to do that first. And along the way, I mean, there's nothing that we can do inherently to quote unquote prevent injuries. But what we can do is reduce the likelihood or mitigate the chance of someone succumbing to an injury by just proper dosing, proper loading, and proper strength training. So a lot of common areas that we work on in terms of joint and tissue friendly, you look at something like the ankle joint and the calves, right? So we talked about that a little bit earlier. So eccentric heel raises or even isometrics, right? Because we know isometric exercises or standing still provide an analgesic or it feels good effect for the body, especially if it's a nagging or cranky kind of soft tissue or just really, 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 really short-term or low-level injury they're dealing with. So that could be an area to address. And look at the knees. Most folks, especially people in our field, don't realize that the knee there are two joints in the knees. And so realizing that there are two major tendons as well. So you have obviously the patella of the bone, you have above it, you have the quad tendon and the quad muscle. Below it, you have the patella tendon that goes down to the tibia and fibula rather. So the big thing is spending quality time, whether it's a wall sit, whether it's, a tall nail fallback or a hand supported kneeler, or just basically slow, gradual, controlled loading of knee flexion or isometric knee flexion, just holding it there. So eccentric and isometrics. And again, I have a ton of videos I can obviously send over as well if that can provide an image here or some visuals. But
that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, totally. And then look at the hamstring, the soft tissue of the hamstring, especially not just the mid belly, but also the high hammy and the attachment point, that proximal hamstring. And so that's important as well. So eccentric hamstring, whether it's using the sliders or the slide board or maybe an isometric, a long bridge where there's maybe 5 or 10 degrees of knee flexion. So it's a bridge you would perform, right? But you know how in a regular bridge, your knees are bent almost about 75 to 90 degrees. Yeah. This is called a long bridge isometric where you have your knees bent minimally and you're really getting hammy, especially proximal hammy. And it's a fun time. It's a great time, I'm telling you. And our athletes love it. So that's another thing you can do. And then you look at so we touch on quad, calves, Achilles, we touch on hamstrings. You look at the hip flexors, right? So any sort of, in our facility, we call it floor. We just try not to use the word supine because, we want to keep words and terms simple. But in our field, it's a supine position, a floor a sprinter, whether you have a mini band around the laces or you're standing, really activating and strengthening the hip flexor area. Because as we all know, stretching the hip flexors, all the time, spending way too much time being mobile and flexible there and stretching it, you're overdoing it. Sure, some mobility in the hip joint, and sure, some flexibility in the hip flexor can be beneficial, but you have to load that and strengthening as well and provide activation as well. So that's some stuff we can hit there. And then you look at maybe some of the glute stuff. So, making sure we're staying on top of our clamshell and all of our clamshell or lateral hip abduction exercise variations as well. So those are some of the main key areas we hit from that point of view to keep our joints friendly and making sure that, we're keeping those areas strong and durable throughout the entire process and not being afraid to isolate those areas, because I think most folks think, strength training, it has to be all the time compound movements. Sure, those make up the bulk of what we do, but there's nothing wrong with isolating small muscles because they aid in the bigger muscles being able to do those bigger movements. And so lastly, you look at some closed chain shoulder joint stability drills, whether you're in a tall plank, whether you're in a side plank, a plank itself, shoulder taps, just being able to stabilize the shoulder joint and concurrently stabilizing the trunk musculature and the spine as well to be able to have the shoulders stable and strong in a really safe and effective position.
Yeah, I think when you said there about, isolating the smaller muscles to help with the bigger compound lifts, working on those, you're only as strong as your weakest link. I think sometimes people think that that people get stronger just by putting more weight on the bar, but you've got to look after yourself. There's more to getting stronger than just practicing the main lifts. You've got to look after yourself, or ultimately you're going to end up hurting yourself and not be able to push the weights up as much as you would like. I know for me, when I mentioned about how I've changed my warm up, my movement prep, I've put a lot more activation in. I'm working a lot more on my glutes and my shoulder health. I think gone are the days that people just going into the gym. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think it happens. Now at some places, but just feeling beat up, just feeling absolutely battered from training. The joints not feeling very good, and I think people are. When we touched on the education side of it for warm-ups, I think people are coming around to the idea that having beat up joints isn't sustainable. It's not a good route to go down.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So obviously we chatted about the warm-ups and adding in these exercises to help with joint health. Would these be added into the warm-up? Would they be on recovery days? Where would you add them in?
Everywhere, literally everywhere. So we like to sprinkle things in the warm-up. So the joint and tissue-friendly exercises. We call them daily vitamins. So you add them in the warm-up. You can add them in the strength training program, as accessory or as auxiliary work. You can add them at the end of the training program for some capacity work, right? And being able to have endurance in those areas, muscular endurance rather. And then you can add them also in recovery at the end. You can also add them on active recovery off days from training as a feel-good circuit. So we often give, quote unquote, homework assignments for our athletes, and it's like 2 or 3 exercises if we feel they need it, and it's a case-by-case basis. So we don't feel as though there's only one place they can live, because they're joint friendly, they're tissue friendly, they're vitamins. They're going to help the athletes feel good, the body feel better, and add some strengthening and stabilization and support to the area. So we literally can add them. We feel as though we can add them anywhere and everywhere, as long as there's a purpose behind it.
I'm a big fan of calling them daily vitamins. I quite like that. I'm really glad you said that, because I know I'll prescribe exercises for my clients, and often they'll only do them in the sessions that they're with me. They might go off and do other things. They might get involved in some classes or something like that. But they won't do their warm up that is for them. I think it should be try and do that as much as they can, whether it be in the warm up, in the session, or on the recovery days or anything like that. I'm glad that when I'm asking people to do a little bit more, I'm not that far off from what you guys are doing over at TD Athletes Edge. So good. Obviously, we covered quite a lot of topics there. Starting off with every human is an athlete, every athlete's a human. Covered warm-ups and joint health. For everyone listening, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom for people to take away from this chat?
I think the biggest thing, if you're a professional in the field, be okay with not knowing the answer, and be okay with always wanting to learn, to grow, to develop both professionally and personally. Surround yourself with people that are way better than yourself, and make sure that you're being driven both professionally, personally, that you're constantly trying to find the reason why and the purpose behind things. It's great to be agreeable and to say, yep, that sounds great, but there's nothing wrong with being curious and trying to understand, well, why? And it's not to be, the curious George. It's more along the lines of to be, well, if you can explain to me why and teach me, right, then I'll know exactly how to take that out moving forward. And I can have my own thought process on that topic or whatever it may be. And so, and additionally, just, pay it forward, give back, and, always be open to, doing your best to help others develop as well. I think, we have to be as selfless as possible if we want this field to grow in the right direction. And so I think our number one job is to do no harm with our athletes and clients and give back to them and empower them and make them feel strong and healthy and, just set the path for them and make sure that they feel as though they are athletic and they are part of something bigger than themselves.
Awesome. I think that was a great point to finish on. I know we covered quite a lot of topics on there. I know I've been looking forward to chatting to you. I've really enjoyed the chat. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. For everyone listening who might want to see the content that you put out there, or ask you any questions, or get involved with any online coaching or coaching, where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you just contact me on Instagram, so it's my first name, my last name, and then underscore, and it'll be in my bio as well. I think that is the simplest way to contact me, and then shoot me a direct message. I love connecting with people around the world. So if you connect with me there, I will open all the other doors and all the other avenues.
Awesome. 100% for everyone listening, look at the content that Matt puts out there. It is really, really good, whether you're a coach, whether you're a person just wanting to learn a little bit more about training. 100% the content that Matt puts out there is awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time to speak with me. It's been absolutely awesome to catch up with you. Again, I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. And I will see you all next week.
Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate it.